Welcome back. Another episode of the Better Learning Podcast. Kevin Stoller here, and I'm with Gary Stager, who I've had a chance to meet, and I've followed him on social media because he's always putting in some really interesting comments, especially on LinkedIn, that are provocative and challenge the status quo, which is what we're all about. So, Gary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Why don't you give the audience who are not familiar with you just a little bit of your background of how you explain to people what you do, and then we're gonna just have some conversation about that moving forward.
Well, I've had an unorthodox career, but essentially I'm a teacher educator. I've been teaching teachers for a very long time. I've been teaching teachers since before I was a teacher. I'm an elementary school teacher by training, but I've taught everything from preschool through the doctoral level. I've written for magazines, I've written books, I've published books, I've keynoted conferences. I've consulted with a lot of schools and run a summer institute for the past 15 years for educators, and have been at the right place at the right time on a number of occasions. I led professional development in the first 2 schools in the world where every kid had a laptop, created one of the first online master's programs for teachers, was involved in some state initiatives rolling out one-to-one computing. I've been online for 40 years. So there's a lot. I have a lot of experiences. Occasionally, I forget some of the things that I've done, but it's all based on the Piagetian idea that knowledge is a consequence of experience, and that I want to live in a world where kids wake up in the middle of the night with a burning desire to get back to school, to continue working on something that matters to them, and their teachers wake up every morning and ask themselves, how do I make this the best 7 hours of a kid's life?
Yeah, perfect. And I had a chance to interact with you and see you present and kind of lead a little bit of workshop here in Arizona recently for that A4LE symposium, and seeing your approach and seeing the work that you're doing made sense for me, seeing that. But what are the I'd love to get to the heart of what you think is wrong with schools and where you think we're making the progress and where we need to kind of double down on progress, because I think you have some really good insights into that.
Well, I remain remarkably confident and clear-headed about what's possible, although I'm increasingly frustrated by the lack of appetite or audience for that, and I'm recently feeling a little bit disoriented about the world, and it seems like COVID was a bit of a mass suicide event for schools, and now we seem to be gleefully just driving a car off the cliff, and so I've always been in a peculiar situation where I've been a bit of a freelancer and entrepreneurial in my work with schools, and there was always kind of an audience and a hunger for people who wanted to make the world a better place for kids, and now I'm feeling a little topsy-turvy about some of that. I still think I know how kids learn. I still think I know how to create a coercive, free environment in which people are in love with what they're doing and they're engaged in personally meaningful project work, and they lose track of the clock and get lost in the flow and want to come back the next day. And where, my doctoral research was based on creating an alternative, high-tech, multi-age, project-based learning environment inside a prison for teenagers, a facility where the state basically copped to torturing children. And yet, when we were able to give the kids 5 hours uninterrupted every day to work on personally meaningful projects, and we supported them in learning what they wanted to learn, aside from the fact that we had kids who hadn't been in school since the 5th or 6th grade, spend 3 months with us and then go to college, and kids who have been all kinds of misdiagnosis, learning disabled and such, turn out to be not that way. For 3.5 years, we didn't have a single incident where a kid had to be removed from the classroom for discipline reasons. And yet we talk endlessly about classroom management. And it never occurs to me to think about classroom management, because I never walk into a classroom thinking I need to manage anything. But I'm now faced with a field in which they think it's okay to give first graders schedules that look like community college, and where reading has not only become a 12-year course of study, but it's being treated like colonizing Mars. And people are touting the 47th or 93rd National Educational Technology Plan, despite its lack of necessity, its overreach, its complete lack of vision, and the endless word salad it contains. We live in a time where every state now has a policy website about AI, and half the living population of the earth is on a blue ribbon commission to explore AI in education. So I don't know. I'd be completely candid with you. I don't want to be a bit of a bummer, but I'm feeling a bit like I'm at sea, and I'm not sure what's going to happen.
So
I will say, though, I think we're entering a period of mean-spirited fundamentalism and authoritarianism in schools, and it's coming from both the right and the left.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to talk more about that. If you were going to try to pinpoint kind of that feeling that you just explained, like, at what point do you feel like that you started to feel that shift? Was it COVID? Was it the response after COVID, or was this stuff going on before COVID?
Before COVID, I wrote articles with titles like "Time for Optimism," and I was going to schools in Mississippi and Oklahoma that were talking about being 100% project based and no grades and multi-age, and I thought, wow, this is kind of amazing. They didn't know how to execute any of that, but that's where I come in. But people had a desire to, and a recognition that things need not be as they seem. I think COVID could be divided into two time periods. I think the first 3 months of the pandemic, people just trusted their intuitions and looked out for one another and said, "Stay safe, don't go crazy. Let's put all the nonsense aside and just take care of one another." And I think that was a glorious period for education. And I remember telling anyone who would listen during that first spring of 2020, don't go to any meetings this summer. Just chillax, and everything will be okay. And when school reopened in September of 2021, we quadrupled down on the worst impulses of schooling. We were making Bitmoji classrooms so we could have the illusion of modernity, and we were enforcing uniform policies when we were invading kids' bedrooms, and we were debating whether we could punish children for having a sandwich while they were in class. And we invented concoctions like hybrid instruction. I already think that instruction is overvalued. But hybrid instruction was the worst of all possible worlds. If you had some kids who were physically coming to school and some kids who were staying remote, well, a rational system would have said, okay, Kevin, you take half the kids and teach them remotely, and Gary, you teach half the kids face-to-face. No, what we did instead was we propped an iPad up in the back of the room, and we did a half-assed job for everyone. And I think that the book banning and the screaming at school board meetings and the rise of science of everything, I made air quotes there, is a reaction to the public getting a gutful of what school looked like, and they were unimpressed. I think it was kind of an open kimono moment for a lot of parents. And without viable options, more humane, more playful, more joyful, more creative, more student-centered, more progressive options for what education could be, I think people have reverted back to basics in a really terrifying way, with a certainty that, like I said, I don't use the word fundamentalism, authoritarianism loosely. I think there's when you say that all children learn anything in one particular way, I think we're on a very dangerous path.
Yeah.